Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coaching the Bible. This is episode 209, season 4, episode 49. Our topic of the week is something I call resonant leadership. Resonant leadership, it's a made up term. You'll see why in just a few minutes as to where that comes from. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good week. This was a wild week here in the Middle East, to say the least. I don't even know how to explain what was going on here, but a lot was going on, and it was just stuff, that you would, I guess you would say, from the movies, basically, right? It's not real. It's impossible to imagine. It's impossible to just sort of appreciate some of the things that were going on this week here in Israel with our intelligence services, with our military services, and the manner in which it felt like Israel had taken the fight very much to the streets and the homes and the buildings and the workplaces of every person who is somehow connected to one of our enemies up north. And it is what it is. Certainly there was condemnations, but from people who I probably don't listen to and probably prefer not to hear from, who probably had nothing good to say to begin with. But, hat tip to our military, hat tip to our intelligence services, and come what may, we don't know what's going to come from it this week. But as we are in this space, I'm going to skip the win of the week and the learning of the week just for today. We're in this space as we're sort of hurtling towards the new year, towards Rosh Hashanah, and I wanted to dive into a concept related to that, built off of it. As I said, season 4, episode 49. Portion of the week is a portion known as Ki Tavo. It's one of the last that's in the book of Deuteronomy. And our topic is this thing called resonant leadership. Now, resonant leadership is a term that I'm creating, that I'm coming up with, that reflects a certain aspect of leadership that I think is very important. That is something that we haven't overlooked, but something that needs to be thought about perhaps a little bit more. And it relates to very much the sounds of the shofar, the ram's horn, or the horn that is blown on the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, on the holiday of the Jewish New Year, for a lot of effect and for a lot of reasons. And I think there's a lot of learning that can be extracted from it, a lot of leadership, really, that can be pulled from it as well. I spent the last couple of weeks in my private time when I'm learning and studying, as I mentioned last week, in preparing to lead the services, but in general, to get a deeper understanding of what it is that I'm saying, laying some things out. And as a person who does love sort of organization, although admittedly my desk is laughing at me right now as I say this, things being set up a certain way, neat and tidy in a certain way, there's an appreciation that I have for some of that. And I do show that sometimes by lining chairs up, by lining, when I see and notice it, the silverware on the table, a napkin, cleaning up, plates and dishes in the kitchen, putting things away, just stuff like that. It's not something I sort of grew up being, but something that I've come to be a little bit more as I age, is just a lot more neat and tidy around all kinds of things. And I very much appreciate good structure and good organization in a lot of things. And one of the places where I've noticed it a lot is in the prayer service for the high holidays, for the New Year, for Rosh Hashanah specifically. And specifically one prayer, it's called the Musaf prayer. It's very long. But in there, the organization of it, the structure of it, is actually quite beautiful. There are 3 added sections in that prayer service. For those who are not educated on this, those who are not of the Jewish faith, who would never have any idea, so I'm going to go inside baseball here for just a few seconds. It's a very long prayer. There's a lot of things that we want to talk about, a lot of things that we want to say before God on this day. And the 3 sections, one relates to kingship, the rulership of God. That's the first one. In Hebrew, it's called Malchuyot. The second one is zichronot. That's the Hebrew term. That relates to remembrance, remembering different aspects of the relationship between God and mankind, but also God and the people. And the third one is called shofarot. And That actually doesn't have a particularly good translation into English, but it relates to the horn that is blown on the day. Each section is made up of 10 verses, and those 10 verses are then subdivided into verses from the different parts of the Hebrew Bible. So you have 3 from the 5 books of Moses, 3 from Psalms, 3 from the books of the prophets, and then the 10th verse in each one, so it's, again, 3 sections of 10, is also back from the 5 books of Moses. So it's incredibly orderly. But when you have something that has 30 verses, and each verse is brought for a reason, knowing that there are other verses that, in theory, relate to the same theme that are not mentioned, you have to sort of ask the question, how did this one merit being in there, whereas other verses don't? So it's this incredibly organized. I have a spreadsheet that I put together this year that I've been working on that organizes all of it so that I can really see the beauty and the structure, color coordinated, and so on, and get sort of the nuance of every single verse. That gives me depth in my own prayer and gives me just some sense of calm on some level in seeing that there is sequence and order in these kinds of things. Certainly at a time like this, where you can seek and find order and some sort of balance in all the things that are going on, I think there's something deeply calming and meaningful about it, and also perhaps the idea that there is some order to the world and the universe, even if it doesn't feel like that all the time. So this prayer service, which is, again, one prayer, a certain portion of the day, that's broken into 3 sections. Each one of those sections is then broken down into 3 subsections, all verses from the Bible. It's beautiful. It's a sort of a masterwork on some level. And this comes down all the way back in the Talmud, where it discusses this idea. It's like amazing. Anyway, so in one of the sections, in the last section called Shofarot, which talks about and quotes different verses from throughout the Bible where the idea of a shofar is mentioned, that horn is mentioned, or the sort of the sounds of it are mentioned, there's an extra verse. And that, there's an 11th verse and a 10 verse section, and it could throw you for a loop. And you're looking at it and you're like, what's it doing here? Why is it here? How did this guy sneak in? And it sort of just drove me to sort of really think about this more. What is this 11th verse in this 10 verse section? So instead of there actually being 30 verses, there's actually 31. And for the person who might like that order and sequencing, you have to ask the question. So that verse, quote unquote verse, is actually an entire chapter. It's the 150th and last chapter of the book of Psalms. And it's very celebratory and it's very happy. And you have to ask, what's it doing there? And so I thought that this concept of resonant leadership that you get is this connection to this idea of the horn, of the shofar, the blowing of it, and what it means in those spaces. And so that's where we're going to go specifically today. We're going to talk about the different sounds of the horn that are made, and we're going to talk about specifically that 150th psalm that is brought up, and we're going to talk about the leadership that resonates, there you go, that resonates from there. So here we go. 3 sounds that are made on the day of the new year. They have names. One is a flat note. It's called a tikiyah. One is a shvarim. It's called shvarim. It's a broken note. It's broken into 3. And then there's one that's called a tru'ah, which is actually broken into 9. So it's 1 long note, 3 shorter notes, and then 9 sort of what I would call staccato kind of notes. Very quick, very short. Almost feels like you could see like a fast drum beat kind of an idea. And so each one of those has meaning, okay? Each one of those has meaning. And I think that there's very much going on here with respect to leadership is not just an idea about awakening, but and you'll see celebrating, but also the opportunity for new ideas and new opportunities and new directions and new action that can be. So the first one is this idea called a tikiyah, which is a long, solid blast. Strong, it's clear, it says, pay attention. The second one, the shorter one, sounds more like a cry or a yearning, And it very much represents brokenness. And the third one, this sort of 9-sound rapid fire idea, this is a sense of urgency, of disruption, and immediate action. And you can look at it and think about this as basically what you might call, I think, a powerful leadership soundtrack for clarity, resilience, and breakthrough. And when you have a soundtrack, when you have a playlist, when you have the things that are the music of what it is that you do, they help you get a deeper understanding of what it is that you're about, and you have the opportunity, the ability to share that. So the first one is this very strong declaratory statement, that straight, flat power note. The tekiah is about clarity. It's like sort of like a sonic blast. When you hear it, you know something is happening. So in other spaces, in certain movies where they're blowing, in like a large shell, it's the conch kind of idea, or when kings are calling the nation out, they're going to blow trumpets, sort of idea. It's a very long sound, very powerful sound. Something's about to happen. The message here is about clarity and consistency. There are no mixed signals. Meaning, it's not saying to your team, we might try this, we might try that, we're not sure. No, this is straight up exactly what we're going to do. This is exactly how I see it. There's a sense of confidence, of calm, of clear direction. This is what matters. This is who we are. Let's go. And there's a great quote that I think relates to this, which is a gentleman by the name of Tom Peters: celebrate what you want to see more of. You want to see more decisive clarity in your team, people taking a firm action when necessary, decisive action when necessary. Then you have to represent it, you have to talk about it, you have to show it, you have to model it. That's the first one. The second one, this broken sound, is the exact opposite. If tekiah is about confidence, then shivarim is about vulnerability. It's about broken. It's about the idea that things don't always go as planned. It sounds like sobbing. And there are moments when you're the leader when you want to simply just cry into your coffee cup. You want to close the door to your office, lock the door, put yourself in the bedroom, close the lights, leave everybody to the side, and just be by yourself because you're broken. And the reality is that great leaders really can't do that way. It doesn't work. They do need to show occasional vulnerability, an occasional moment of brokenness, and it's very powerful for the team to see the leader in a moment of weakness. I know it's always like a thing with leaders. They don't want to shed tears. They don't want to cry. Remember when they talked to President Bush after 9/11? They tried to keep a strong face. They tried to keep a certain look on his face as he was told the news, as he went to the different spots. At the time, Rudy Giuliani, before he sort of went loony, talked about the idea that in public, he presented a certain face, and in private is where he wept and he broke down. But you have to appreciate that that's the case. Sometimes you hit a wall. Sometimes there's a setback. Sometimes things break. And sometimes you need the opportunity to appreciate that brokenness and give yourself the opportunity to recover and to rebuild. And in that, you get the opportunity to celebrate that rebuilding process. There's a great quote here that also I think really works beautifully from Margaret Cousins. Appreciation can make a day, even change a life. Your willingness to put it into words is all that's necessary. Don't wait until the big win to appreciate the team. Sometimes the biggest victories happen when you're patching things back together when it broke. The third sound is this truest sound, which is this like 9-short staccato blast kind of an idea. This is fast, it's disruptive, it's urgent, it's action. And so if you have clarity and decisiveness and you have vulnerability and brokenness, now you have action. So it's not about waiting, this is about go, now, do. In leadership, there are moments when you can no longer sit and ponder and reflect and think and conjure up all kinds of circumstances and decisions. When you hear that sound, it means Wake up call, ring-a-ling-a-ling, the bell is ringing, and time for action forward. This is no time for, we talked about analysis paralysis way back. This is a time for momentum. This is a time for breakthrough action. This is when you push your team and yourself forward based on the clarity, based on those decisions. You don't have to know everything. We've talked about that before. But you can't not act. And in these moments, it's very important to build the team up and get the team to act. And if you really want to win, then this is how you win. There's a great quote here as well from a gentleman by the name of Doug Conant. I'm not sure who he is, but it's a great quote. To win in the marketplace, you must first win in the workplace. And that's what this is. Getting the team to work, getting the energy up, getting the inspiration up, getting the action happening, people moving and doing. That's how you're going to break through. That's how you're going to get to the ultimate results. Now, with all those things true, and those are the great sounds of the ram's horn that are blown on this day, they're very powerful, and it does wake up the person. There's an amazing additional thing that happens here as well. And this is where Psalm 150 comes into the picture, which is this. This psalm is celebratory in every word. It talks about celebrating God specifically through the use of every different instrument available. Go through it. It's a short psalm. It's about 6 or 7 verses. And everything in there is about celebrating God with this instrument and with that instrument and banging on the drum and blasting a horn and using a harp. Everything is used with the opportunity to praise and to celebrate God. Take it out of the God environment, the religious environment. This is where all that happened comes together in that success, and now you're celebrating. So all of the work and all the difficulties and all the pain and all the suffering and all the decision making and all the back and forth and all the indecision, but then all the decisiveness and then all the clarity and then all the vision and then all the tasks and all the work and the actions and the successes that come together in this space of celebration at the end. This extra verse, quote unquote, is added not at the beginning of this entire prayer. It's like the last verse, okay, second to last, but like right at the end there, because you've now gone through all of this process, and now you can celebrate. And now you can have your moment of joy, because leading isn't only just about leading in the battle. It's also celebrating when the battles are over. It's also celebrating when every team member does what it is that he or she is supposed to do. Quote unquote, every team member is every instrument, and the instruments do their parts and the instruments play together, and it's not some sort of sounds of dissonance, but it's a sound of unity that comes together through the team, and that is celebration. So it's important that in resonant leadership, this idea is not just the first one and not just the second one, not just the third one, meaning not just the idea of clarity and decisiveness, and not just the idea of vulnerability, and not just the idea of action. It's also in celebrating. You can become an even greater leader by celebrating. And so it's not just celebrating at the finish line, it's celebrating regularly. Appreciating, we talked about this multiple times, the journey, and celebrating along the way during the journey. You can celebrate the clarity when it becomes clear. You can celebrate the resilience and the bounce backness. Is that a term? It's not, but I'm just making it up here. And the sense of rebuilding that comes through the team. And you can celebrate the team that's taking bold action. You can tailor the celebration to the individual in the specific moment for someone specific who does something, or a team that does something. And you can also celebrate with everybody, highlighting a team for everyone, and collectively celebrating everyone, just like in Psalm 150. Everyone and every instrument and every person and every sound comes together to bring that together. It's a beautiful sort of vision about how you can you can lead through celebration. And what I would say is that I think there's an important piece of the puzzle here, that there is a way to do this that perhaps you're not doing. What I mean by that is that in the space of your leadership, you can figure out a way to lead better by celebrating more. Do an audit of when it is that you celebrate on your team, if you celebrate at all. Take a look at when those moments are. Is it quarterly? Is it annually? Is it monthly? Is it never? Do you just stop sometimes with the team and just have a moment to, enjoy each other's presence, appreciate each other for simply who you are, and not because somebody, made a big sale or closed a big deal? Celebrate more often with the team. Appreciate more often with everybody around, even when it's bad. And then you will celebrate more when it's good. So create opportunities, even force moments of celebration. Think of it as like the Amazon Day effect. Amazon just made up a day in July, and now it's this massive shopping holiday. You can make up celebrations as well for the team, and I think that's really important. Number 2 is that when you are celebrating, make it deeply personal, even as you're making it team-wide. So you can tailor the celebrations to specific people, and you can tailor your comments specifically to people and what it is very specifically that they did that was great, that's worth celebrating, and that creates great effect. As I said before, celebrate what you want to see more of, bring that into being in the team, and then you have a much better team, a much more successful team, and simply just a much happier environment that you have around. You realize ultimately that with your team and the people around you, family, friends, community, that it may not be the victories that are the most important thing, but it may be the small celebrations that you have together or the small moments that you have together, which are the most important things in reality. So this is this idea that I'm making up, but I'm putting into the world called Resonant Leadership, based on our learnings from the ram's horn, from the shofar that's blown, and from the addition of the verse of Psalm 150 into the prayer services itself, to celebrate, to connect with the team, to be decisive, and to appreciate the decisiveness, the vulnerability and the brokenness, the rebuilding as well, and then the action that's taken by everybody on the team. And to finish, as always, with a quote. This is a quote by a gentleman by the name of Robert Brault. "Enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things." That is Coaching the Bible for this week. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great, great week ahead. Health, happiness, safety, and success.